was standing, waiting for everyone to stop chatting so that I could begin my song. It was my best friend Tia's birthday party, and she had asked me if I would sing her favorite song for her. As everyone quietened down, I began to sing. One last time, I need to be the one who takes you home. One more time, I promise after that, I'll let you go. The whole of the room erupted into cheers and applause. I could see Tia standing in the corner mouthing thank you to me and smiling. I finished the song and was about to walk over to Tia when someone stopped me in my tracks.
Excuse me, can I give you my card? I'm a talent agent and I'd like to offer you a place in an upcoming singing competition which will be airing on TV.
But before I go on, make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you do, you could end up on TV too. I just stood there staring at the agent, like a deer caught in headlights. I didn't know what to say. It was such a shock.
I will contact you again with further details.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I ran straight over to Tia. Oh my god, you're not going to believe what just happened.
What?
An agent just offered me a place in a singing competition, and it's going to be shown on TV.
Oh, Olivia, I'm so happy for you.
I know, I can't believe it. I'm so excited.
Mason, did you hear what Olivia just said?
What?
She has been offered a place in a singing competition.
Really? Wow, that's fantastic. So pleased for you, Olivia.
Tia's boyfriend Mason high-fived me and then went off to join his friends, leaving me with Tia. Mason is a really nice boy, Tia. I'm so happy you have someone nice.
Yes, I'm very lucky, but you're lucky too. You have an amazing voice and you're so pretty too.
Even though Tia was my friend, I knew that what she was saying was true. I had always been complimented on my voice, even when I was a little girl. My mom would often ask me to sing for her friends, or when we had family come to visit. People were always quite shocked at just how good I was. And to be honest, I was a bit of a boy magnet too. Boys were really attracted to me, not just because I was a good singer, but because I was pretty too. Even though I didn't have a boyfriend, I wasn't worried. There was plenty of time for that. I was more concerned about pursuing my singing. After my first meeting with the agent at Tia's birthday party, things began to move really quickly. The agent contacted me and sent me through the itinerary that I had to follow before the show. A week before the live show, I flew out to the location of the venue. When I landed at the airport, there was a limo waiting for me. I really felt like a celebrity when I saw my name being held up on a sign. The limo took me to the hotel where I would be staying whilst I was there and where the competition would take place. When I got to my room, I found a note waiting for me. It told me that I was to go down to the meeting room at 3 o'clock to meet with the organizers and the other contestants. As I waited for the lift to arrive, I began to hum a few notes, just to warm up my voice. I didn't realize there were 2 girls behind me who were also waiting for the lift.
I guess you're in the competition too then?
I turned around with a start. Oh, sorry, I was just warming up my voice.
Yes, it sounded as though you need to do quite a bit of warming up to sound as good as we do.
I was hurt by what they had said, but I didn't say anything. I just kept my thoughts to myself. I hope the other girls aren't as mean as those 2. The lift arrived, and we rode down to the ground floor in silence. As we entered the meeting room, we were met by a babble of chatter. I left the 2 mean girls behind me and started making my way around the room. I said hello to a few girls as I went along. Most of them were quite friendly, but a few of them just glanced at me and looked away without speaking. Wow, they're taking this thing really seriously. A man walked out onto the stage and picked up a microphone.
Can everyone please take a seat so we can begin the first round?
I watched as one by one the girls took their turn on the stage and sang their songs. Some of them were really good, but I did have a little smile to myself when I heard the songs from the 2 girls in the lift. I mean, they were okay, but definitely not great. Finally, it was my turn to go up on the stage. I picked up the microphone and waited for the song to begin. As I began to sing, the whole room went silent. Everyone stopped what they were doing and stared at me. I could see the jaws of every boy in the room dropping as they stared at me adoringly. When my song finished, all the boys in the room started clapping loudly. I couldn't help but smirk at the mean girls as I walked off the stage. The results from the first round of the competition were going to be announced the following day. After breakfast, we went back to the meeting room and waited for the names to be called out. When the announcer called out my name, my heart started beating so fast. Yes! I've made it to the next round! The next round was in front of a live audience. Once again, I had all the boys eating out of my hand. This time, the audience was asked to vote for the person they wanted to put through to the finals. Because the audience was made up of a lot of males, it wasn't a surprise that I made it to the finals. I really was a boy magnet. Even the other boys that were taking part in the competition were in awe of me. One by one, they all tried their luck in asking me to go on a date with them, but I wasn't having any of it. They were way too superficial for me, so I turned each one of them down. Eventually, the day of the competition finals came. The show was being aired live on TV, so the competition didn't begin until 7 p.m. I spent the whole day rehearsing my song. I knew it was perfect, but I still wanted to practice as much as possible. My parents were driving down with Tia and Mason so that they could all watch me perform. I hadn't seen them as I had been busy all day, but I knew they would be somewhere in the audience. One by one, each contestant took to the stage. Some of them were honestly fantastic singers. The competition level was really high. I was the last singer to perform. As I walked out onto the stage, the glare from the lights shone into my eyes. I tried to search through the faces in the audience to find my parents, Tia, and Mason, but it was difficult to make out one person from another. As I began to sing, all the boys started drooling over me. People began screaming and whistling, but out of all the screams, I recognized 4 voices that were screaming the loudest. I looked down to the front row, and sure enough, there were my parents, Tia, and Mason. When my performance was finished, I looked down to where they were sitting. My parents had huge beams on their faces, and Tia and Mason smiled at me too. But when I saw Mason smile, I hesitated for a second. Was that a strange look Mason gave me? But I brushed off my thoughts and went to take my place next to the other contestants. The announcer was coming back onto the stage.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the votes are all in, and we have a winner.
We all waited with bated breath.
Can I have a drum roll, please?
When the drum roll ended, the announcer lifted his microphone and began to speak.
And the winner is... Olivia!
I couldn't believe it. I had won. As I stood up and walked over to take my trophy, hundreds of golden paper stars dropped from the ceiling onto my head. I had never felt happier in my life. Everyone was patting me on the back, shaking my hand, and congratulating me. I felt on such a high. It was the best feeling in the world. When I got backstage, Tia and Mason were waiting there for me.
Oh, Olivia, well done. I knew you would win. You were amazing out there.
I smiled at Tia. Thank you. Where are my parents?
They were coming with us, but they must have got lost somewhere. I'll go to find them. Mason, stay here with Olivia.
I watched as Tia rushed off to find my mom and dad.
Olivia, you look like a star out on stage. You're so pretty.
It felt a bit weird hearing my best friend's boyfriend say such nice things about me, but I just smiled and said, "Thank you."
No, I'm serious. I don't think I ever realized just how beautiful you are.
I was really shocked when he said that, and I was about to tell him that I didn't think he should be saying things like that when he suddenly leaned in and kissed me. I immediately pushed him away from me, but it was too late. I could see Tia standing at the doorway with my parents. She had seen everything. My parents' faces were in shock, and I could see they were disappointed in what they had witnessed. The next thing, Tia burst into tears and ran off. I ran after her, without even stopping to explain anything to my parents. Tia, wait! It's not what you think!
Oh, don't try to deny it. It's exactly what I think. I saw you kissing my boyfriend.
I didn't! He kissed me, and I pushed him off me straight away!
How could you do that to me? You were supposed to be my best friend. I can never forgive you for this.
Tia stormed off.
I never want to see you again. Don't try to contact me, because I won't answer your calls.
I was so angry with Mason. It was his stupid fault that this had all happened. When I got back to my parents, Mason was nowhere to be seen. Honestly, it wasn't me. I would never do that to Tia. She's my best friend. I told my parents the whole story, and thankfully, they believed me.
We know you'd never do something like that to your best friend. Maybe once Tia has had some time to think about it, she'll realize that too.
But unfortunately, Tia didn't realize it. I tried to call her and send her hundreds of texts, but she never answered. Eventually, I gave up any hope of getting our friendship back on track. Plus, I began to find myself really busy with my singing. After the competition had aired, the offers began flooding in. TV shows wanted me to appear on them, and record companies started offering me contracts. I signed a record deal and began writing my own songs. After my first hit album, I began touring the country. Every week I was traveling from one town to another, performing to packed audiences everywhere. But even with my newfound fame and popularity, something was missing. Without Tia in my life, I felt lost. We always told each other everything. I missed having her to confide in. So that's when I came up with my plan. If she wasn't going to listen to what I wanted to say to her in a phone call, then I would find another way to get my message across. I decided that I would write a song and dedicate it to Tia. Oh, Tia, you were my best friend. I would never hurt you. I will love you to the end. When my record company released my song, it went straight to #1. It was played on every radio station in every town and city. I really hoped that Tia would hear it and listen to the lyrics. The last concert on my tour was being held in my hometown. I was excited to sing there, back where it had all begun. At the end of the show, as I walked back on stage, the crowd shouting and calling for one more song, I picked up the microphone and spoke into it. I've saved the best song for last. This song is dedicated to my best friend Tia. Even though we aren't close anymore, she still means the world to me. As I began to sing the lyrics, the audience began shouting and cheering. I didn't notice that someone had walked out to join me on the stage. I only realized when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around and dropped the microphone in shock. Tia! Tia just started smiling at me and then put her arms around me and hugged me tightly.
I've missed you, Olivia. Let's never fall out over a boy again.
That's fine by me.
I sat there with nervous excitement at the table in the restaurant. It was the first time my boyfriend was going to meet my family. We had been dating for a few weeks now, and he was everything I'd ever dreamt of. He was good-looking, funny, and one of the most popular boys in the school. I couldn't believe it when he asked me to go out with him. I just hoped that my family would like him as much as I did. Tom leaned over to me and whispered in my ear, "Oh my god, you're not going to believe this. The ugliest girl I've ever seen in my life just walked in." I turned to see who Tom was looking at. "Who?" I asked him. "Over there," he said, pointing. "See the girl with the red top on?" The blood drained from my face. Tom was pointing at my identical twin sister. But before I go on, make sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any more shocking stories. My mom, dad, and sister came over to our table. "This is Tom," I said to them. "Tom, this is my mom, dad, and my identical twin, Diana." Tom shook my dad's hand. "Hi there," he said, full of charm. He turned to me and whispered, "Did you say identical? You don't look anything like her." "Oh, I do when I take my makeup off," I replied. Tom just laughed, but I felt terrible. The rest of the evening went really well for the others. I think that my family really liked Tom. My dad paid the bill, and we got up to leave. "Do you want to come back to our house and watch a movie?" I asked Tom. "Oh, sorry, Michelle, I can't," he said. "I need to get home. I have so much stuff to do." "Okay, see you in the morning." "Tom's really nice," said Mom as we drove home. "Yes, a very polite young man," said Dad. "Yes, I think so too," I said happily, although what he had said about my identical twin sister was still imprinted in my mind. The next morning, I went downstairs to the kitchen. "Your breakfast is ready," Mom said. "I haven't got time for breakfast," I said. "I'm meeting Tom to walk to school together." I walked to the corner and stood there waiting for Tom. I kept on looking at my watch. It was getting late. If he didn't come soon, I would have to leave or I would be late for school. I decided I would give him 5 more minutes, but he still didn't show up. So I walked to the school alone. I hoped he wasn't sick. I hoped it wasn't something he'd eaten at the restaurant last night. But when I walked through the school gates, I saw Tom standing with his friends on the other side of the playground. "Tom, where were you?" I asked. "I've been waiting ages for you." "Oh, stop bothering me," he said nastily. His friends started laughing. I thought he was probably stressed about something, so I decided I would just leave him alone. I would just talk to him later on at break time. The morning lessons seemed to really drag. I couldn't wait for the bell to go for break. Eventually, I heard the ringing of the bell. I stuffed my books into my bag and ran off to go and find Tom. He was standing in the corner with his friends. They were talking to a group of girls. I went over to Tom. "Hi there," I said. "What do you want?" he asked. I didn't know why he was acting so strange towards me, but I just said, do you want to go grab a Coke with me?" "No thanks," he replied. "Oh, and by the way, you're dumped." The girl started giggling. "No way am I going to be with someone who is that ugly when they take their makeup off," he cried. I was so embarrassed. I wished that the ground would open up and swallow me. I turned away from him so that he couldn't see that my eyes had filled up with tears. I ran out of the room. I could still hear him and his friends laughing at me as I ran into the corridor. I hadn't gotten very far when I bumped into my twin sister Diana. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Why are you crying?" I told her how Tom just dumped me in front of everyone. "He thinks we're both ugly," I told her. "He's the one who is ugly," Diana said. "He is ugly inside. What a horrible piece of work he is." "Don't worry, he is going to pay for this. One day we will get our revenge on him." It wasn't long after that we got our chance to get him back. Our school was holding a talent contest. They had put a notice on the board, and if you wanted to enter, you just had to add your name to the list, saying what your talent was. I went to have a look at the board. Sure enough, the first name on the list was Tom's. He had written that his talent was playing the guitar. I went to look for Diana. I knew Tom would enter the talent contest, I told her. He is such a show-off. I knew he wouldn't be able to resist being in the spotlight. I bet he thinks he'll win. I already had a plan worked out. I told Diana all about it. "We will both climb the ladder to the deck above the stage," I said. "Then, when Tom comes on, we will drop slime and feathers on top of his head." On the night of the talent show, Diana and I made sure we got to the stage early. We climbed the ladder and waited on the deck. Finally, it was Tom's turn to perform. He walked onto the stage with his guitar. He was smiling. He looked so confident that he was going to be the winner. As he was about to start playing, I shouted down to him, "Hey Tom, this is for calling my sister ugly." With that, Diana tipped the bucket of green slime straight on top of his head. I quickly threw the bucket of feathers right after her. He looked horrified. Slime was dripping down his face and feathers were stuck all over him. Everyone in the audience was laughing. Tom looked so embarrassed. He ran off the stage and out of the room, leaving a trail of feathers behind him. It was a few weeks after that, Diana started acting a bit odd. I wondered what was the matter with her. Usually we spent lots of time together, but recently, she never seemed to have any time for me. She didn't even hang around with me at school. One day I decided that I had had enough. I decided I would go and find Diana and make her have lunch with me. I was walking towards the dining room when suddenly, I saw Diana. She was talking to Tom. I wondered what on earth was going on. Diana was giggling at something Tom had said, but then he winked at her. I couldn't believe it. Tom was flirting with Diana and she seemed to be lapping it up. How can she do this to me? I thought. I went striding over to them. "What are you two doing?" I cried. Diana looked a little guilty, but she just put her head down. "What does it look like we're doing?" replied Tom. "I'm dating your sister now." "Is it true, Diana?" I asked. She nodded her head. "I'm sorry, Michelle," she said. "We just fell for each other. No hard feelings." I stormed off. I couldn't believe it. I was never going to forgive them for this. When Diana came home from school, I went into her room. "How can you do this to me?" I asked her. "You know how horrible he was to me." "I can't help who I fall in love with," she said. "You're just going to have to deal with it." "I don't want anything more to do with you," I screamed at her. "Well, it's lucky that I have Tom then, isn't it?" she shouted back. I heard the door slam and I watched as she went down the street. Tom was waiting for her at the corner. I saw him put his arms around her and pull her towards him. She started talking to him. I bet she's telling him everything I just said, I thought to myself. It was about an hour later when I heard the door open. I went downstairs and saw that Tom and Diana were in the lounge. As I went into the room, Tom pulled out his telephone and started videoing himself. "Hey guys," he said. "How cool am I? I used to date her." He pointed the camera at me. "They tried to prank me, and now I'm dating her twin sister." He was literally vlogging this. At that moment, I couldn't believe I had ever fallen for him. I looked at the camera. "Oh, no," I exclaimed sarcastically. "My sister has betrayed me." But then Diana knocked the phone out of Tom's hands. "You're wrong," she said to him. "You're the one that has been betrayed, Tom." Tom looked at her in confusion. "What do you mean?" "Do you remember the night we were at your house and we sat up, talking all night?" she asked. "Well, I secretly recorded everything you said." Tom's face turned white. He looked at me. I told him how we had it all on tape. How he had said so many mean things about everyone at school. He had even said that he hated anyone who was fat or ugly. He thought that only good-looking people like him should be allowed out into the world. "We're going to publish the recording online," I told him. "When everyone hears what you have said, No one will want anything to do with you ever again. What are you talking about? Tom said. I would never say anything like that. Why are you trying to deny it when we have the proof? Asked Diana. So, let me hear it then, said Tom. We played him the recording. As he listened to it, his face fell. You're right, he said. It definitely sounds like me, but I promise you, I would never say anything so mean. Yes, you would, I said. Don't you remember the night you met my parents? You said my sister was so ugly. But I've never met your parents, Tom replied. The night we were supposed to go to that restaurant to meet them, I ended up sick in bed with a stomach bug. I told my brother to call you and let you know. I was confused, but I felt sure he was lying. Okay, well, what about when you dumped me in front of all your friends? That was so mean. Are you serious? He asked. You're the one who dumped me. I woke up late that morning, and by the time I got to the corner to meet you, you had already left. I ran to school. I felt so bad. When I got there, my brother told me that you had dumped me. I was so sad. I looked at Diana. There was no way we could trust Tom. He was a horrible guy, and I knew he was just trying anything to stop us from putting the recording out online. Don't believe him, Diana. He's only interested in himself, I said. Okay, said Tom. I understand you're suspicious, but please, just come with me, and I'm sure I can explain everything. I looked at Diana. I wasn't sure what she would do, but she nodded at me. Okay, I said. You have one chance to explain yourself, or this is going viral. Diana and I followed Tom. We went to his house. What are we doing here? I asked him. Just wait and see, he said. We followed him inside. Come this way. We went through to the lounge. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There sat on the couch was Tom. Well, it wasn't Tom exactly, because Tom was with us, but it was someone that looked exactly the same as Tom. I looked at Diana. She was looking just as confused as I was. Meet my brother Tim, said Tom. Tim looked up. His face dropped. Yes, said Tom. We know what you've been up to. I guess you already know Michelle and Diana. We waited for Tim to say something, but he just sat there with his mouth wide open in surprise. Why would you do something so horrid? Asked Tom. Tim, you can't just go around saying people are ugly. Oh, shut up, Tom. You're just an idiot, snapped Tim. Tom looked at me and Diana. I'm so sorry, girls. I totally understand if you don't want anything to do with me ever again. I looked at Diana and she looked at me. I knew she was thinking exactly what I was thinking. Tom, I said, we have both loved you, and we still do now. Maybe we can all just be good friends. Tom smiled. That sounds like the perfect solution. A voice broke through our happiness. I cannot believe that you have come out of this still smelling of roses, screamed Tim. I hate you so much. Tom, Diana, and I linked arms and walked out of the house. See you later, Tim, we shouted. We're going out for some fun.
One night, while watching television with Stacy, an ad crossed the television screen. It was an old woman with a wrap on her head and large hoop earrings. She reminded me of a gypsy. What she said next changed my life. Hey, my name is Soraya. Like and subscribe to our channel, and of course, smash that notification bell and maybe something amazing will happen to you that will change your life forever. The old woman held a triangular bottle of perfume in her head. She said that it was an ancient formula that when used will attract boys. My eyes twinkled as I looked at Stacy. Do you really think it would work? Stacy looked at me in disbelief before laughing out scandalously.
Do you really think that would work? You really think that something as powerful as getting boys to drool over you will cost only $19.99?
It's worth a try. Talking to boys always came naturally to you. Some of us need a little help.
Well, it's your allowance, but when it doesn't work, you can't say I didn't warn you.
Stacy shrugged. I grabbed my phone and quickly dialed the number and purchased the perfume. The person on the other end said that in 2 days my package would arrive. When the package finally arrived, I darted up to my room to open it. The bottle was already in my hand when Stacy walked into my room.
So I see your love potion has arrived.
She chuckled. I can't wait to wear this to school tomorrow. I hugged the bottle tightly, ignoring my sister's comment.
I don't understand how a brainiac like you could believe in something so silly.
Time to leave. I playfully pushed Stacy out of the room and closed the door. The next day, I sprayed on my perfume before leaving home, and I walked into school confidently. I expected boys to rush towards me and bow down and worship the very essence of who I was, but that did not happen. Well, not all at once. As I passed the cafeteria to head to class, one of my books fell, and before I could pick it up, One of the boys standing close by rushed to pick it up. I thanked him as he handed me the book and expected him to walk away, but he didn't. He continued to walk with me as I headed to class. Can you believe it? As we walked on, more and more boys joined us. Before I knew it, boys were swarming around me. I felt like a goddess. That day at school, boys went out of their way to get me to pay attention to them. There was even one boy who climbed to the roof of the school and proclaimed his love for me. I got more phone numbers that day than Stacy probably got that month. I wondered if this was how Stacy felt every day. The rush was exhilarating. I thought you said that it wouldn't work, I teased Stacy as I walked into her room after dinner that night.
Girl, please. What happened today at school was just a coincidence. Don't think too much of it.
Do I detect a hint of jealousy, sis? Because I do recall your crowd seemed a bit scarce today. Stacy threw her pillow at me and laughed.
Ain't nobody jealous of you and that wacky love potion. Now get out of my room. I have a math quiz to study for.
That night, as I prepared for bed, I thought about all the things that I would get the boys to do for me. I mean, what's the purpose of having them drool over me if they can't help me with a few things while at school, right? I carefully picked out my clothing for the next day and got under my covers. The next day, my usually pulled back hair fell loosely on my shoulders. My loose-fitting clothing was swapped for fitted jeans and a cute fitted turtleneck.
My, don't you look cute this morning?
Mom looked me over as I walked into the kitchen.
You do look cute, sis. Who's the new boy?
Stacy's eyes danced mischievously.
Oh, there's a boy. What's his name?
I sighed heavily and watched Stacy through squinted eyes. There's no boy, Mom. Stacy is just being annoying again. After breakfast, Stacy and I left for school.
Hey, since you're popular now and you're actually dressed decent, maybe you can come hang out with my friends and I after school today.
I agreed to hang with Stacy at the mall after school. We decided to meet by the school gates after school. Once we got to school, I waved Stacy off and headed to class. Today, I didn't only turn the heads of the boys, but the girls noticed something different about me as well. As the boys began to float towards me, I handed one of them my books while I locked arms casually with another. During lunch, I didn't have to stand in line to order lunch, nor did I have to feed myself. The boys did everything, even paid for it. There was so many boys that I decided to eat lunch under one of the shady trees on the school compound so we could all fit. I could feel the other girls' eyes boring into the back of my skull as I passed them, but I didn't care. I finally had the attention of the boys, and that was all that mattered. After school, Stacy and I went to the mall, and the boys from school followed. Stacy tried to talk to a couple of them, but they ignored her while showering me with little trinkets and gifts that they bought for me at the mall.
So, Scott, are we on for tomorrow night?
She flirted.
Nah, babe, I think I'm gonna ask Soraya out tomorrow.
He turned to me and smiled.
Babe, how about we catch a movie tomorrow night?
Before I could respond, Stacy glared at me and stormed off, followed by her friends. Stacy would be okay. I mean, it's not like Scott was the only guy on her agenda anyway. Through the crowd, I spotted a boy by the gadget kiosk. He was really cute. As they began to walk towards him, the boys followed. I turned around and asked them to stay there until I came back before heading once again towards the kiosk. Hi! I fiddled with one of the gadgets on the counter. When he turned to me and flashed a smile, I saw myself spending the rest of my life with him.
Hi, my name is Adrian.
I'm Soraya.
A pretty name for a pretty girl.
I blushed. I was wondering if you would go out with me sometime. Before he could say no, I quickly asked the girl at the kiosk for a pen and quickly scribbled my name and number on his arm. I handed the girl the pen and told Adrian to call me. I walked past the boys and they followed. After the mall, one of the boys dropped me home since Stacy had already left. I can't believe you left me at the mall. I stormed into Stacy's room when I got home. I watched as Stacy placed her headphones on her head and flipped through a magazine. Oh, so we're playing the silent treatment game now? What are we, like 5? Still nothing. I stomped out of Tracy's room. I couldn't believe what a brat she was being. For years, boys were at her beck and call, and now that the shoe was on the other foot, she couldn't be happy for me. The next day, I walked to school alone, but from the time I got to school, my band of boys, as I fondly called them, showed up. As we passed Stacy in the hallway, she spoke loudly for me to hear.
You always know when someone isn't accustomed to being popular.
Her friends laughed. I walked up to Stacy. And you always know when someone isn't accustomed to being in the shadows. Jealous much? What's the matter, Stacy? Is my light too bright for you? I grabbed the shades off of Boy's face and flung it at Stacy. I suggest that you wear these if the light is too bright. I strutted off, leaving Stacy speechless. That day during school, Stacy and I avoided each other like the plague. And when we got home, it wasn't any different. While doing homework, a strange number called my phone. Hello?
Hi, this is Adrian. Is that the pretty girl with the pretty name?
I blushed. It definitely is. We chatted on the phone for a bit and then he asked me to go out. I hesitated. If I went out in public with the perfume, then other boys would surround me. I couldn't have that. How about you come over to my house? We could watch a movie here and have some popcorn.
Sounds great. Tomorrow night good for you?
Yeah, sure. We chatted for a few minutes again before I hung up. I squealed. I ran to find Mom, who was in the kitchen, and asked her if I could have a boy over tomorrow to watch movies. Stacy sat drinking juice by the table but didn't say anything. Mom agreed. I hugged her and ran to my room. I had to pick out the perfect outfit for my date tomorrow. The next evening, I got nervous when Adrian did not arrive at 6 p.m. as planned. I wore a short, thin-strapped blue dress. I knew it was a bit much for a home date, but I wanted to look my best. I already had the snacks and drinks ready for when he arrived. At 6:15, the doorbell rang and I answered it. I welcomed Adrian in and he apologized for being late. I introduced him to my parents who vacated the room after the introductions, but Stacy stayed. It was my dumb luck that Stacy and Adrian knew each other from summer camp. I sat quietly as I listened to them for a few minutes. Why was he paying more attention to her than to me? I excused myself and went to my room to apply more perfume. When I returned, I sat closer to Adrian and he scooted closer to me. I smiled. Stacy excused herself and Adrian and I were finally alone. We had a great night and we decided to do it again soon. Over the next few weeks, Adrian and I got closer, and he even asked me to be his girlfriend. I always made an excuse to not have public dates. We either hung out at my house or his. I told him that I would think about it and give him an answer soon. See, I was torn between finally getting all the attention I ever wanted from boys and now having to reduce that to the attention of just one boy. Was having the attention of just one boy worth it? Even though Adrian and I were dating, I was still wearing the perfume to school and the boys were still chasing me. I'm young and I should have options, shouldn't I? But one afternoon, everything changed. While walking towards the school gate arm in arm with one of the boys at school, my heart stopped when I noticed Adrian by the school gates with a bouquet of flowers. My heart sank. I told the boys to go on without me, and I went over to Adrian. He looked devastated. What are you doing here?
Is this why you don't want to be my girlfriend? So you can flirt with other guys?
Adrian, it's not what it looks like. By now, other students were looking in our direction, and I wished I could be teleported to anywhere.
It's exactly what it looks like. You don't want to be my girlfriend, and you never want us to go out in public. The puzzle now fits together perfectly. I don't ever want to see you again.
He turned and walked. Well, fine. Then I don't need you anyway. Do you not see how many boys I have to choose from? I yelled. Before leaving home the next day, I sprayed my perfume. I was determined to show Adrian that I did not need him. But when I got to school, things didn't go as I thought it would. There was no crowd of boys as I walked to class. There was no one to hold my books or to buy me a soda before class. I even dropped one of my books on purpose, but it seemed as though all the boys turned away from me. Throughout the day, I wondered if the perfume only lasted a few days and then it just wore off. I hardly remembered what was taught in school that day as my thoughts returned to Adrian and the great times we spent together, as well as all the attention that I got from the boys. It was fun while it lasted, I mumbled as I walked out of the school gates and headed home. As soon as I got home, I went into the kitchen to get something to drink.
Hey, sorry about you and Adrian.
Stacy said behind me. I grabbed a juice from the fridge and pushed past her.
Look, we have to talk.
I have nothing to say to you. As I turned to walk away, she blurted out,
It was a prank.
I turned slowly to face her with a confused look on my face. What was a prank?
The perfume didn't work. I convinced the boys at school to play along. The whole Scott thing was also just a prank. We just wanted it to be believable.
So you made me look like an idiot in front of the whole school?
Me? You began to treat the boys like slaves because you thought the perfume worked. Was that why you wanted boys to like you? I thought that by giving you a little popularity that it would build your confidence when talking to boys. But you were mean and bossy. Now the boys at school know who you really are. I hope that when you started to see Adrian, that you would stop using the silly perfume. But you didn't. So I called him and told him to meet you after school.
You did what? Before I knew what was happening, I was on top of Stacy, and we were both scuffling on the floor. Mom ran into the room and pulled us apart. We were both sent to our rooms till dinner was ready. How could my own sister do this to me? Did she think that I was so desperate for boys to like me that she needed to pull such an elaborate prank? Was Adrian a prank too? I would never forgive my sister for what she did. If you got a perfume that made someone drool over you, what are some of the things that you would make them do? Leave your answers in the comments.
Ethan and Sarah walked past me, laughing and giggling to themselves. I could feel my blood boiling inside. What was he doing with her? He should be with me. Sarah had never liked me, and the feeling was mutual. I guess you could say we were arch enemies. That's why I hated the fact that she was dating Ethan. Everyone knew that I had always liked Ethan. We had known each other since we were 5 years old, but we had never dated. When Ethan started going out with Sarah, she couldn't wait to let me know. "Did you hear, Belinda? Me and Ethan are official," she said. I knew she was gloating. I didn't care what it was going to take. I had to find a way to steal him from her. But before I go on, make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any more crazy stories. I spent all the next weekend trying to come up with a plan to get Ethan for myself. I knew that he wouldn't just dump Sarah. It was obvious they were madly in love. It did cross my mind that I could kidnap Sarah, but then I realized that that would be a pretty crazy thing to do. Then it came to me. I had always been a bit of a computer whiz kid. Maybe I could use my computer skills to hack into the school computer system and change Ethan's grades. I knew that Ethan hadn't done very well in his end-of-year exams. I felt sure that if I changed all his grades to A's, then he would want to date me. After school the next day, I saw Ethan walking home alone. I ran to catch up with him. "Hi, Ethan," I said. "Oh, hi, Belinda," replied Ethan. "Hey, do you want to know a way to get straight A's this year?" I asked him. "I wish. My parents are going to be so mad when they see my end-of-year report. The highest grade I got was a D. What if I told you I can find a way to change all your grades to an A? Really? You'd do that for me?" "Of course I will. But there is one condition." "What's that?" "You start dating me." "But I already have a girlfriend." I told him that he would have to dump Sarah if he didn't want to get into trouble with his parents. At first, Ethan was hesitant. I could tell at that moment that he really liked Sarah. But then I could see his mind working when he realized how his parents might react when they found out he got D's in his exams. And then he nodded at me, even if it was reluctantly. So that's what he did. Ethan told Sarah they were over, and he started dating me. The first time Sarah saw us together wasn't very pleasant. "Ethan, what are you doing with Belinda?" Sarah asked. Ethan looked like he didn't know what to say, so I spoke instead. "We're dating now," I said smugly. "I can't believe it," Sarah cried. "Ethan, what happened to us? We were perfect for each other." Then she turned to me. "What did you do to get him from me? I know you must have meddled somehow. I bet you made up some lie about me, didn't you?" "Come on, Ethan," I said, pulling him with me. "She's crazy. Let's not waste any more of our time on her." At first, things went really well with Ethan. I felt really happy he was my boyfriend. But looking back, I think that was mainly because I was just glad that I got one over on Sarah. Soon, the novelty of dating him began to wear off. He wasn't really my type, to be honest. Actually, he was quite boring. All he ever wanted to do was sit at home playing computer games, week in, week out. I was the complete opposite of him. I hated staying at home, and I hated playing computer games. I wanted him to take me to the movies or to a nice restaurant. But whenever I suggested we do something, he always had some reason for not being able to go. Finally, after another boring evening sitting in his house, I decided I was going to end it with him. "I'm sorry, Ethan. It's just not working out." Ethan was fine about it. "Let's just agree to be friends," he said. "Of course," I said. "Oh, but make sure you don't tell anyone that I changed your grades, or I will change them back again." but this time I will make them worse than before. I won't tell anyone, I promise. The next time I saw a boy I liked, I didn't bother wasting my time flirting with him. I just got straight to the point. I offered to change his grades if he dated me, but I soon got bored with him and moved on to the next boy. I dated boy after boy. None of them lasted very long though. It was too easy to just get another boy when I got bored. I could get any boy I wanted. One thing did surprise me though. Ethan ended up getting back with Sarah. When I first found out they were dating, I started panicking. What if he tells Sarah what I've done for him? I thought. I decided I would have to speak to him. The first chance I got, I went up to him and whispered in his ears, "Don't forget your promise, or you're going to get a fail in every subject." "Don't worry, I haven't told anyone," he said. "Your secret is safe with me." After our conversation, I stopped worrying about Ethan, which is why it came as a big shock when I bumped into Sarah at school the next day. "I know what you did," she said. "I know that you've been changing all the boys' grades so that they will date you." My heart sank. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I can't believe Ethan told you," I said. "He promised me he wouldn't say anything." "What?" Sarah said. "No, it wasn't Ethan that told me." "Well, if it wasn't him, who was it then?" "It was Mrs. Walker, the school secretary." "Yup. Why would she tell you?" "Because she's my auntie." I listened in shock as Sarah told me that her auntie had noticed that some of the boys' grades were a lot higher than she remembered them getting. She had gone to the principal and told him what she had found. The principal searched the computer history to see who had accessed the system. He then traced the IP address and found out that it had come from a computer located at my home address. "Once I knew you had changed the grades, I put 2 and 2 together and realized how you had got Ethan and all the other boys to date you," she said. "I couldn't believe that I had been caught. Oh my God, the principal is going to tell my parents and I'll probably get expelled." I thought, they're going to be so angry with me. I knew there was nothing else for it. I was going to have to find a way to blackmail the principal, so he didn't tell my parents what I had done. When I got home, I went straight to my room and switched on my computer. I began to investigate the principal. I was hoping I might find an embarrassing photo or something like that. The last thing I imagined I would find was that he was actually a wanted criminal. It was all there in black and white. He had escaped from prison and was on the run. The FBI had been looking for him for almost 5 years. I had no idea how he had managed to evade them for so long, but this was just what I needed. When the bell rang at the end of school the next day, I waited around until everyone else had left the school building. I went straight to the principal's office and knocked on the door loudly. "Come in," said the principal. I walked into his office and sat down at his desk. He looked a bit shocked to see me. He probably thought that I was there to ask for forgiveness. But he was wrong. "I know. You're an escaped prisoner," I told him. His face turned white. "You better not tell anyone what I've done, or I will call the FBI and tell them where you are," I said. "Okay, you win," he said. "I won't tell anyone." I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Finally, I could relax again. Everything was going to be okay. I was just about to leave his office when suddenly the door burst open and the room was filled with FBI agents. "Put your hands in the air," one officer shouted. The principal did as they said. They put handcuffs on him and let him out of the school building. As he went out, he turned to me and said, "This is all your fault, Belinda. You're going to regret what you've done to me." I was so confused. I hadn't told the FBI yet. Why were they here? I looked at Mrs. Walker standing in the doorway. "What just happened?" I asked her. "I overheard you blackmailing the principal," she said. "I called the FBI and told them everything." "What? Why would you do that? My life is going to be ruined now because of you," I screamed at her. We found out at school that the principal had been taken back to prison. Mrs. Walker ended up calling my parents and telling them everything that I had done. "We're so disappointed in you, Belinda," said my dad when he came to pick me up. "You're grounded for a month." When I went back to school, no one would speak to me. Sarah had told everyone that I had been changing grades and that I had tried to blackmail the school principal. It was a pretty miserable time for me. It was towards the end of term, and I was walking home from school all alone. Nobody wanted to walk with me anymore. Suddenly, I felt a strange sensation. I was sure someone was following me. I turned around, but I couldn't see anyone at all. I carried on walking and was almost home when I felt someone grab me from behind. I couldn't see who it was. They put their hands over my mouth and blindfolded me. The next thing I knew, I was being pushed into a car. I tried to scream, but the hand over my mouth just stifled the sound. We drove for about 10 minutes and then the car stopped. Someone took me out of the car and led me into a building. Someone took off the blindfold. The glare from the light blinded me for a few seconds, but eventually everything came into focus. 2 men were standing in front of me. "What do you want with me?" I cried. "Please, don't hurt me." "Do you remember what you did to your school principal?" one of the men asked. I felt the fear rising up inside me. I remember the principal's words as the police were taking him away. "I'm sorry," I said. "I wasn't going to tell the FBI. It was all a mistake." "Well, it's a mistake that's going to cost you a lot," the other man said. "Now you just sit here and don't make a sound. We will be back in an hour." They left the room and I heard the sound of the key in the door. I had no idea what they were going to do with me, but I knew that I had to try to find a way out of there. Luckily, they hadn't tied me up. I looked around the room, but the only way out was through the locked door. It was no good. There was nothing I could do. I had no choice but to just sit there and wait for them to come back. It wasn't long before I heard the sound of the key turning in the door. I took a deep breath. This was my only chance. When the door opened, I was going to try and make an escape. I stood up, but when the door opened, it wasn't the 2 men standing there. It was Ethan. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" I asked. "I've come to save you," he said. "Quick, follow me." I didn't wait around a second longer. I ran out the door and followed Ethan outside. We ran down the street as fast as we could. We had to get away before the 2 men came back. Eventually, we were out of breath and had to stop running. Then we hid in a shop doorway. "How did you know where to find me?" I asked Ethan. "I was walking behind you on the way home from school, and I saw the men bundling you into the car," he said. "So I followed them and waited outside the building. When I saw them leave, I went inside the building. I couldn't believe they had left the key in the door." "You've saved my life, Ethan," I said. "What can I do to repay you?" "There is one thing I would like." Anything. "I want you and Sarah to put everything behind you. I want you two to become friends." The thought of being friends with my arch enemy was disgusting to me. But I really didn't have a choice, did I? So now, Sarah and I are doing our best to become friends. For Ethan's sake. 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 For